name is Jacinta and I am an astrophysicist originally from Mandurah in WA, but I currently live in Europe because I work in Croatia. So Mr. McGoran was my physics and maths teacher when I was in high school, and he asked me to make this video to introduce myself to you. So I'll tell you a bit about myself, who I am, what I do and how I got to be here. So I was born in Perth and I grew up in Mandurah, where I went to primary school and high school. And I was always really fascinated by astronomy and the universe and space. Where I really wanted to be an astronaut so that I could float. But then later on, because I think it's the most amazing adventure you could possibly have. But also when I was 11 years old, somebody gave me this book as a present. It's called Magnificent Universe, and it kind of changed my life because I just used to love looking through the book at all of the amazing photos, most of them by the Hubble Space Telescope, and learning about supernovae and galaxies. And then when I started learning physics and chemistry and maths in high school, I realized that these were just languages that gave me a much deeper understanding of what was going on in these pictures. And it kind of opened up a whole universe to me. When you're in high school on a day-to-day basis, sitting in a class learning equations and concepts and reading textbooks and doing tests, it can be kind of dry because you have to do it. You have to learn the fundamentals. You have to walk before you can run. But this isn't what I would call really learning physics. Of course, you have to learn the maths, which is the underlying language of physics, before you can understand the physics concepts, and before you can get into the real meat of what physics is about. And I'll discuss that with you a little bit later. But after high school, I decided to do a Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Western Australia with a major in physics. It was a pretty challenging course, and again, lots of fundamental maths and physics. I'd say maths was probably always my weaker point, but I was still good enough at it that it didn't hold me back. And then at the end of my third year of my degree, I applied for a really cool summer internship, and I was one of 3 Australian students chosen for an internship at the Gemini South Observatory in Chile. So I spent 3 months working in La Serena, which is on the coast north of Santiago, and that's where I got my first real tastes of real science, of real scientific research, and I really loved it. I was working on a project looking at a red giant star called Arcturus with very, very high resolution imaging, and I was trying to figure out if there was a companion star orbiting around Arcturus. We didn't find one, but I enjoyed the experience enormously, and I found out what real research involves. It involves coding and learning how to use special astronomy software packages for viewing and processing the data, how to apply statistics and physics in a real life situation, and to discover something new. So from then on, I was totally hooked. I had the opportunity to spend a couple of nights up at the Gemini Observatory at the top of the Chiles, of the Andes Mountains, and that was an amazing experience. The view of the Andes at sunset and the view of the night sky was really unforgettable. So after that, I decided for sure I wanted to continue on with a career in astronomy. So I returned to Perth, and I started the 4th year of my degree, which is called Honours. I think the system is a bit different now. It's a 5-year course which encompasses an undergraduate and a master's program, but when I went through, we had 3 years of undergraduate plus 1 year of honours, and that honours year incorporated a half load of coursework and then also a half load of a research project where you have to write up a short thesis. So lucky for me, prior to that, just 2 years before, several astronomers had come to work at the UWA physics department. So I was really in the right place at the right time. Before that, there was almost no astronomy in Western Australia at all. So I was able to do my honours research project with the astronomy team, and I was working with Professor Lister Staveley-Smith on a project about the Magellanic Stream. And the Magellanic Stream is a huge tail of hydrogen gas getting ripped off the large and small Magellanic Clouds, which are the two nearest galaxies to the Milky Way, and they're getting ripped off as they orbit around the Milky Way. So again, I learnt more about coding and data processing, some new science, and honours was a really tough year. The reward was definitely worth the fight, but just be prepared if this is something you want to do. It was a very intense year. Although, as I said, I think the system has changed a bit now, so you now have a 2 years master's program. After that, I probably should have taken a gap year to recover, or maybe after high school, because I was a bit burnt out after that. But I didn't. I decided to keep ploughing on, and I started my PhD. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with what a PhD is, but that's when you're technically still a student. You're a graduate student, and you have about 4 years to write your PhD thesis. So again, this is when you're learning to be a real scientist and you do some real physics. You have about 3 to 4 years to work on your own original research project with the help of your supervisor. And at the end you write a large PhD thesis, which is then sent to 3 or so international experts in your field, and they examine your thesis. The only official criteria you have to meet is that you've made a substantial contribution to knowledge, and it's really as vague as that. But after that you graduate and you get the title of doctor. So now my official name is Dr. Jacinta Delhaize, which is very fancy, but I never use it. So here is my PhD thesis. It's all printed out and nice and pretty. The title is Studies of Galaxy Evolution Using Stacking Techniques, and well, I wrote a lot of words and I made a lot of pretty graphs. I did my PhD thesis at the University of Western Australia at the newly opened International Centre for Radio Astronomy Research, or ICRA, but I was also partially supervised at the University of Oxford in the UK, so I got to spend a few months a year at Oxford working with researchers there. And if you ever get an opportunity to go and see Oxford, really it's an amazing place. It's one of the oldest and most beautiful university towns in the world, and if you're interested in studying there, don't forget there's the Rhodes Scholarship that you can apply for if you want to do a PhD at Oxford. There's the WA branch of the Rhodes Scholarship. So most of my PhD was done with the Parkes Radio Telescope, which is in New South Wales. And this is a famous telescope because it was actually used to pick up Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin's signals when they first walked on the moon. And I used Parkes to pick up the very faint signals of hydrogen gas in distant galaxies a billion light years away. And I developed a technique called spectral stacking for combining these signals in a way which could let us learn something about how galaxies have changed or evolved after they formed after the Big Bang until now. And so this is why my research field is called galaxy evolution. If you want to know more about this research, you can watch my 3-minute thesis video by Googling Jacinta Delhaize 3-minute thesis, and then you can learn a bit more about my research there. Some other cool things I got to do during my PhD is one time I got to meet Buzz Aldrin in person, and that was a really incredible experience. He's an amazing person. He gave a very, very good speech, and I also got to attend the Lindau meeting of Nobel laureates in Germany in 2012, and I met 27 winners of the Nobel Prize in Physics, and I had discussions with them about how to lead the world to a better future. So I'd say that was one of the cooler things I've ever had the chance to do. After my PhD, I started my first job as an astronomer or astrophysicist, and my job title is postdoctoral researcher. I work for the University of Zagreb in Croatia. I'd call myself a radio astronomer because I mostly work with radio telescopes. It's a little bit different to the work that I did during my PhD, but it's still galaxy evolution. So now we use data from a telescope called the Very Large Array in New Mexico in the USA. And yeah, astronomers are really not that good at naming their telescopes. There's one called the ELT, the Extremely Large Telescope, and yeah, it doesn't really get much better than that, but the telescopes are really cool. And I've just published my new paper, which is about the relationship between the infrared light coming from a galaxy and the radio light, and this gives us information about the new stars that are forming in the distant galaxies. So my team and I have put out a new series of publications for this work, and I'm going to make a new video about it soon, so I'll send you along the link when it's ready. I also work a little bit on active galactic nuclei, which are galaxies that contain feeding supermassive black holes. So that's also really interesting. Now I've been living in Croatia for 3 years and I really love it. It's a huge life adventure. Croatia, Zagreb is quite an affordable place. I live in this nice apartment by myself in the center of town, and Croatia has really stunning natural beauty with the mountains and lakes, waterfalls, and of course there's over 1,000 islands in the Mediterranean coast, which is not a bad way to spend your summer. Which incidentally happens in the middle of the year. Somehow that never really occurred to me that summer holidays were not the same as Christmas holidays here, but that's a good thing to keep in mind. The language is Croatian, which is a Slavic base. Yeah, I find it quite a difficult language to learn, but I'm slowly getting there, although a lot of people speak English anyway, so it's fairly easy to get around on a day-to-day basis. It's also really cool living in the centre of Europe because you get to travel a lot, which I really enjoy, and especially as a scientist you really travel a lot for work. So I've been to all 6 inhabited continents of the world for work. Well, okay, in a few months I'm going to Japan and that will tick off Asia, but other than that I've travelled to them all, of course except Antarctica, and it's been a really, really incredible journey. Very challenging but also very rewarding. As well as travelling, my other main hobby is dancing. So I've been doing ballet since I was about 6 years old, and I spent pretty much all of my school holidays at dance exams and competitions, performances for ballet, jazz, contemporary, and all of those sorts of things. I still take adult classes here in Zagreb. It's a great form of exercise and creativity. But I'm also really into swing dancing now, so that's like 1920s, 50s partner dancing, kind of similar to rock and roll. And I also dabble in Argentinian tango, which is a beautiful dance, but also quite difficult to master. In school, I really liked drama, and I was in the school plays and things like that. My favourite subject in high school was actually not maths or physics, it was English literature, and that's what I was also the best at as well. It was my best subject. But all of this dancing, the drama, the English literature, you might be surprised to hear this, but it's actually helped me enormously in my scientific career. Um, in fact, it's what's helped me to stand out a bit. So, because they gave me excellent communication and presentation skills. So I'm very comfortable in front of an audience. I'm good at teamwork and leadership. And ballet also taught me discipline and persistence. So really never underestimate the importance of your other interests and your passions, and also they'll stop you from going insane, which is a pretty good thing. Um, in the future, well, I have one more year on my contract here in Croatia, and then I'll move on to somewhere else. I haven't really decided where that is yet, but my long-term plan is to end up back in Western Australia, hopefully working with the Square Kilometre Array Telescope, which you might have heard of before. It's going to be a really enormous radio telescope built partially in Western Australia and partially in South Africa. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you're interested in any of this stuff, please get in touch with me. You can feel free to email me or follow me on Twitter at Delhaize. I'd really love to hear from you, and maybe we'll also have the opportunity to have a chat over Skype in the future as well. So thank you for your time, and have a good rest of the day. Goodbye.